Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning I want to talk to you about the actual steps in order to not just make the decision to adopt a plan to spend, not just sign up for a service to help you monitor that plan to spend, but how to actually build out that plan to spend. So let's jump right into it. So today we're going to talk about how to best build out your plan to spend. Today we're going to start with income. Where do you derive your income from? Is it a corporate America position? Are you a contractor? Are you self-employed? Do you own a business of some kind? Or do you have dividend income or rental income? Look at it from the standpoint of where do I derive my income from on a monthly basis? What is the consistent sources of income that come into my bank account? So look at it from that standpoint. Look at any side hustle. Look at any additional income that is consistent that you can build into your plan to spend so that you can realistically look at what then needs to be allocated to what categories. Next, let's look at expenses. Let's look at every expense that you reviewed in that bank statement or that credit card statement over the last 90 days. And I would encourage you, if you have not watched the previous episode, to go back, watch the previous episode so that you know what you're looking for. And the purpose of this is really to break down those expenses into categories and simplifying it into areas that then you can monitor. So as I mentioned in the episode yesterday, you want to build out your plan to spend based on the categories that really matter most to you. And of course, obviously, you're going to have ones that are essential, and you're going to have healthcare, you're going to have housing, or so on and so forth. You're going to have categories that are essential, but you're also going to have categories that really do matter the most to you. So I'm going to go through each of these categories and the associated percentages that were recommended by every dollar. So the first category they outlined was giving. Giving is one of those areas that I have at the top of my list, and I attribute the largest percentage of my budget to. And I absolutely love this category because it is about serving others, and it's about giving back rather than hoarding. And our tendency as humans, I believe, is to focus on our own needs and not necessarily to look up and look out at how we can make a difference in other people's lives. So this category, they attributed 10% of your take-home pay to, and this could be given to an organization or a cause that matters to you, maybe your local church or even adopting a family to support. But I would encourage you to make this a priority in your budget, no matter what season of life you're in. The second category has to do with retirement savings, and initially the savings rate should be at 10%, and I believe that they encourage over time moving that up to 15%. But I would just make savings a goal, especially if you don't have any kind of rainy day fund or you don't have any security or safety fund beyond that in the event of a layoff or some kind of emergency in your life. So you want to make sure that you're planning for savings and that you are building in a buffer, building in margin between you and what happens in life. So the third category has to do with food. This category almost mirrors saving in the sense that they attribute 10 to 15% of your take-home pay directly to food. Food would include dining out or ordering Uber Eats or going to the grocery store. So in that category, be thinking about the aspects that you spend directly on nourishment, directly on food, and build that into your budget. So the next category has to do with household utilities. So this would be maybe gas, maybe water, or electricity. But what you want to do is make sure that you're building in 5 to 10% of your take-home pay to be attributed to your utilities. So housing is the next category that they jumped into. That was the next category to address. That was set at 25% of your net or take-home pay. I know that this is an area that seems to be all over the map. The recommendations are all over the map, but generally what you'll find is about 30% of your gross income should be going to housing. And there's others that stretch it out to 37% and so on and so forth. But I would just encourage you to look at your house from a standpoint of how you could house hack or use some kind of arbitrage to Airbnb your property, or figure out, renting out a room or something like that, so that this growing expense of housing doesn't pummel your budget. So I would just encourage you in that aspect of housing. I know this is probably the most challenging aspect or category within these categories. But I believe that there's ways to have affordable housing in this time, even in this life cycle of the economy. The next category had to do with transportation. Transportation was set at 10% of your take-home pay. This would include your vehicle and everything associated to that vehicle. And so you may have fuel expense, you may have oil changes, you may be saving up for tires or whatever the case may be, or it may even be a car payment. But what I would just encourage you to do is look at it from the standpoint of, okay, where is my expense with regards to transportation? And your expense may be low in this area because you live in a highly populated area that you can use mass transit, or you don't own a car and you utilize ride sharing or Uber. But I would encourage you to look at your expenses in this area. The next category they look at is general health expenses. This is an area that is recommended to stay within the 5 to 10% range on. The next category beyond that is insurances. This is a large area because this could include your auto insurance, homeowners insurance, or even your healthcare insurance, depending on what category you decide to put it in. But they recommend this category to be somewhere between the 10 to 25% range of your net take-home pay. So the next category they build in is recreation. They recommend spending about 5 to 10%, specifically around recreational activities. And so this may be applied to the soccer team that your son or daughter's on, or it could be just an outing for your family. But be thinking through what you're spending on recreation and whether you're actually planning that in as a priority within your plan to spend. So personal spending is the next category that they recommend spending 5 to 10% on. And this category for each of us may be a certain hobby that we enjoy. I love reading, for example, and so I may spend that on audiobooks or on physical books. But I would just encourage you to make sure that you are spending a certain amount of your budget on things that matter personally to you. The next category has to do with miscellaneous expense. So miscellaneous expenses are anything that could be in the category of a run to Walgreens and or an Amazon purchase of nitnoy things. And this is estimated at 5 to 10% of your take-home pay. So as you're looking at each of these categories, look at which category or categories matter most to you. Look at the categories that you want to apply a disproportionate amount of focus on, and look at it from the standpoint of, okay, I have 100% of my income to allocate. I can't go beyond that because then I'm, living beyond my means. But within that 100%, what am I going to allocate to what area based on the lifestyle I want to live? So what matters most to you? What areas do you need to maximize and what areas do you need to minimize? If housing is a lower priority to you, maybe you need to get a less expensive place to live. If traveling is a high priority, maybe you need to attribute more of your spending to travel than to housing. But figure out for you specifically what matters most to you and maximize that. What matters least to you and minimize those expenses. As I've mentioned before, don't want what you don't want. Don't just look at your neighbors. Don't just look at your friends. Don't just look at those surrounding you and the things that they prioritize for their finances. I have many friends in my sphere that I don't align my spending with whatsoever. And that's okay. I mean, there's other aspects that we have common ground on per se, but spending may not be one of them. And don't feel the pressure of necessarily needing to match the spending of those around you. So I love to help people build this plan to spend. And I'm spending a shorter amount of time on this topic just because we're going directly into the theme of debt. If this information is helpful to you though, please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you're reminded to come back on a daily basis to improve your personal finances. So I wanted to spend a certain amount of time on building out a framework around the purpose of building a plan to spend. The purpose behind actually signing up for a software that helps you to track your spending. And then also to be able to allocate the proper amount of resources to the areas, to the categories that matter most to you. And I did this in a preemptive approach to going into the theme of debt. And debt is one of those aspects that so many people are plagued by, and so many people are losing nights of sleep. There's so much stress around the topic of debt. And honestly, it's an area that is near and dear to my heart to help people build margin and build that ability beyond the chaos to have freedom. So my call to action today is you've been looking at your last 3 months of statements. You've been looking at signing up for the new software that you're going to utilize to track your spending. And now you're looking at the categories to which add the most value for you. So look at it from a standpoint of spending time to bring those 3 aspects together so that the categories that you are budgeting for, the categories that you are building a plan to spend in, align properly with the lifestyle you want to live. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.